Okay, so you guys, just so you know, you've entered the roast portion of the episode. We're currently still in like what are we watching, but there's not a lot of positivity when it comes to Riverdale. We are all cut up now. So we know what happened. The one positive note is Bargy, but I'll table that for now. And so Bargy shippers, hold on tight. We'll get to something like light. But first, what is Riverdale doing?
I'm not even sure they could answer that question. I think where I want to start is I struggled so much with the time travel episode for many reasons that I don't even know if I could list them. Where were you guys at with that one?
For me, it did the thing that shows do when they want to talk about something important in history, but they're uncomfortable talking about certain things in history. And Tabitha time hopping through different racist periods of Riverdale's history was not it for me, especially when we weren't really going to go there. I mean, I told y'all that I wasn't, why are we having a meeting about whether or not the town should become a sundown town? And the fact that we're not even going to really explain what a sundown town is for anyone who's watching who does not know. Like, first of all, they sort of mention it, Black people can't be in the town after dark. If they're caught here, it's considered a crime and they'll be dealt with. The word is they would have been lynched or brutally attacked and then pushed out of the town. That is what happened in sundown towns. In fact, they still exist in 2022, and people know where they are and they know to avoid them. But when Riverdale wanted to do it, I was like, really? So then we have Artie, an ancestor of Archie, being like, I served with Black folks in the military, and I have to tell you, I would not appreciate this, and we don't need to be a sundown town. And I was like, that's great, Artie, but this just feels like a scene that shouldn't be here.
The whole concept of it, I was like, what does this have to do with anything that's currently happening on the show? It felt like something, if they wanted to give Aaron Westbrook like a spotlight episode to give her like a chance to shine in the midst of all this chaos that's going on around her as a character, I mean, she was really great in the episode, but the content was kind of another example of Riverdale taking an ambitious swing and not really knowing what they're aiming for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like they had the ball on the tee, they swung, and they're like, hope it hits the green, but then it lands in the water.
It definitely felt like each chapter of that episode, or time period she landed in, it felt like each one would have needed to be its own episode to deal with the themes that they were trying to explore. But instead, you had this condensed rush by the number story for each chapter. So none of them really had the gravity they needed to have. Of course, the second one, when you saw how emotional Tabitha was getting over the Martin Luther King announcement, that was really, it hit home. But that's because of how great Erin's performance was. I just feel like some of the writing let the story down. And I know what Reed said when he said sometimes it didn't feel like it gelled with what was happening in the present day, other than the fact that what started to look like a Percival Pickens doppelganger, but then by the end of the episode was actually maybe real Percival Pickens himself. Is he immortal? Is he a time traveler? How did he end up in these places? I think the episode took so many ambitious swings that the story started changing as it went on, and it got harder to follow. So that in the final chapter of this, what started as a really thematically heavy episode, she ended up sword fighting with an immortal tyrant that had a demon face dressed in old-fashioned outfits in a shop, and then he disappeared when she stabbed him. I'm like, how did you get from A to B? It just, too much happened in that episode, and I'm not sure the explanations in the end made up for it.
No.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of meat on the bones of those Percival stories. So like we get episodes like Time Traveling and The Fog, where, for lack of a better word, they're kind of filler because they didn't necessarily contribute much to the overall. Like, I don't feel like I walked away from either episode with a better understanding of what they're working toward with Percival. I don't know. And also another thing that I did not like about the time travel one is the tease of Jughead dying. It's like the stakes on that now are so low that I do not care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, either kill him or please move on. Like I can't sit through another season where it's like, oh, is Jughead gonna die? Because I know that he's not, and I don't care. It's not that I want him to. No, well, I won't get into that. But like, when she said that, I'm like, okay, I see that you're sad because it's your boyfriend. But I, as a viewer who has watched this show for 6 seasons, they're not gonna kill him.
No, it's going to, I'm going to say this now. It's going to be Riverdale Jughead because she already heard him on the radio when during the fog episode. I think she thinks it's her Jughead. But I don't,
Okay.
or he's going to replace him. Michael, it's basically going to be the bait and switch. I think the bait and switch of Iris and HR from season 3 of The Flash. So could that be great writing wise? Like the scene itself, sure. How we're getting there, no. Like to go back to the time travel episode, the fact that it's unclear why Percival needs Riverdale of all places, and why in different periods of time he keeps coming back to Riverdale, which is in upstate New York, I believe. Like, for what reason is this the battleground of the fight between good and evil? And why is he supposedly the face of darkness? Which they're very careful about that. So he can't be Lucifer. Like at all. But even then, like we're going, like, why does he have the sword that pierced the side of Jesus or the Holy Grail? Like they're in Riverdale for what reason? Like would he have that? And like I know it's a curiosity shop, but it just seems weird. And I don't like him as a villain. And it's not that the actor isn't doing good with what he's been given. He is. It's that he's serving no purpose besides antagonization.
Yeah, it's so vague. I'm like, I don't understand what the stakes of his end game really are. I don't know. It's just not clicking with me too much. There's just been no real sense of cohesion this season. Like we get time travel, then we get a fog, and then we get a mention of TBK, who's been on the back burner since season 5, I think. And it's like, can something plug this into the wall? We need something to work. Find the plug.
Well, especially because we like the town is still central, which is why the storylines are being dragged down. But it's like now it's central but not central, because we're once again refocused back on the importance of the characters and their powers when we spent episodes simply talking about the town, as if the town is the thing that they need to be concerning themselves with. Also, Riverdale is doing that thing where like it's ignoring the fact that they're not reading other characters into what's happening. So then you have Betty for some reason not catching on that her mom is being mind controlled and not getting out of the house and away from her, so that all of her plans aren't being just taken back to Percy. She's just like, my mom gave the journal. Like, yes, she'd do that anyway, but considering the fact that he can mind control people, maybe we should move over to Archie's house, even if it's temporary.
And something that I don't like is it feels like they're using the same characters for the villain. Like Alice, once again, it feels like she's in the midst of this for no particular reason other than she's outside of the main 4 cast members. And then Kevin, again, in the latest episode, the library book, I'm like, I'm so tired of this show using his sexuality against him. When he kissed Percival, I was like, do they absolutely not give a crap about Kevin? I don't, but like at some point they need to give the man some dignity. Like, why is he a part-time sheriff? He's there whenever they need him. And we need to talk about Kevin. It's not good what they're doing with him. It just drives me crazy when I saw them kiss. I was like, of course, once again, Kevin's the one that's just powerless to the villain again.
We saw all this with Edgar Evernever. It was those two exact people, Alice and Kevin, who were like pulled over to the dark side. And, oh no, you're wrong, Betty, even though you've been right the whole time. I'm not going to believe you, Betty, even though you've been right the whole time. And no, rightly, Betty's going to be right in the end. And it's like we've been here before, we've done that before. And I don't know why I had this, like, wouldn't it be hilarious if they made Percival and Kevin get together, because in that one randomly scene they were standing right like that there. I was like, where is this going? And that's exactly where it went. It feels like they're trying to be so unpredictable, and yet you can actually see the twists coming now, because you're like, oh well, clearly they just do that for no reason because it makes no sense, and then they go and do that for no reason because it makes no sense. Kevin's been roped into this after Percival called him a naysayer, 4 minutes before that. And it feels like it was like he was starting to show doubt. So Percival has to do this to like reel him on side. And like, Kevin is not a good character. He can see clearly, but he can't see clearly that these people are pulling the wool over his eyes, that he's been pointed in this direction or that direction. Same goes for Alice. It's like, we've been here before. These characters are doomed to play the same roles they've played before. And can we also talk about Veronica? Because somebody called the Avengers, we have a Black Widow on our hands. Why was that story necessary?
It's not. If there are two people, there are two characters that well, she's a main, but I feel like they sometimes try to treat Kevin as a main, and it just doesn't work because they don't give him anything. But like, they don't have storylines. So like, to unpack further about Kevin first, the thing that is bothersome about his characterization, not only just in this season, but in general, is that his driving like core trait is that he makes terrible decisions. And that has not changed. He's not grown past it. Like, for instance, Moose is literally just brought back so he doesn't make it to dinner about his son. And yes, it is because of the fog, but the way that the writing is treating it is like, well, even if there wasn't fog, Kevin probably would have missed that dinner because Moose offered him an opportunity to get close. And he chose that because it does seem like the way that they want to write him is that because of his insecurities, he often needs to be intimate, however he needs to be intimate. But they refuse to go past it. Like, it's like Tony said in the conversation, she has no problems with like sexual freedom. The issue is that the way that Kevin decides that he's going to have a sex life is that it tends to be reckless and violent, and he hasn't unpacked why. And he needs to on Riverdale, because I feel like whenever they bring it up, it is just meant to hurt him, or it is just to foreshadow Kevin making another terrible decision. Fangs is on the phone talking about how Kevin abandons everybody. Like, and I was like, well, he's mad now, but why weren't we mad earlier when Kevin literally walked out of their son's life while he was still cooking in the womb? Mm-hmm. Like, that was completely fine. I wrote in my notes, I want Kevin to have an actual love story.
Definitely.
He deserves to have a love story. He also deserves to get out of this town. Because for a character who seemed to be so full of light and humor in season 1, they just continue to keep grounding him into the story, and not in a positive way. Just keep grounding his character down to serve the plot. And because they keep doing that, every time that we seem like we're going to unpack his feelings, they just seem to further the plot point, but not further his own arc. And that's not fair.
No. And that's like those other shows that we talked about that do make time for the authentic stuff as well as the whatever the genre they fit into. Riverdale doesn't want to tell those kinds of stories. So they conveniently bring up the trauma when it suits the plot and when it suits the character acting out of character, but never decide to delve into the trauma so that they can then use it as a plot device 6 years later. It just feels like they don't want to tell those stories, so they aren't. And that's not good drama. These characters deserve to have their voices heard rather than being pointed in one direction by another character.
Yeah.
I will say that the latest episode, the library book one, was made for me the most interesting episode we've gotten. It's because the cast was working toward a goal together, and they're usually always better together anyway. So, but also what Sabrina said earlier is that it's not fun anymore. And I feel like the show is starting to take itself a little too seriously, and not in the sense that they think they're like Succession or like some huge drama, but like where in the beginning, the first 3 seasons, they could kind of fall back on the camp. Like, this is outlandish and we know it's outlandish. They were in on it. It feels like it's just, there's a sense of energy and like fun that's been sucked out of the show this season. And I don't know if that's a conscious decision for this storyline, but I suspect that it's not. It might just be a sign of a show running out of gas a little bit. And that sucks, you know, because I think we were all really excited about this season. We all still really love the show. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it if we didn't have any care for the show. But it's unfortunate that we like just deflated in excitement. Like, it just happened out of nowhere. We're just like deflated. And as much as like we get these moments, we're like, oh, there's the Riverdale we know. There's like, it's a yin yang, like a roller coaster. there's another thing that like, oh, why'd they do that? Or like, ugh, like I'm watching the library book one. I'm like, why do they keep making these choices with Veronica? Like she's always got the drink in her hand. Like they're making her Hiram, and it makes me uncomfortable. And I don't know, it's frustrating to see a show that you once like defended for being campy and fun and misunderstood turn into the opposite of that.
Yeah, because Kevin and Veronica are basically the same. Like the through line for those stories that they both choose intimacy in order to get close to somebody because they're lonely. And she did the exact same thing that Kevin did, except she did it with Geraldo, and her he died. And now and now we're like the Black Widow. And I guess that'll be some of the campiness that we'll get back next episode. But considering the fact that they've literally had her do absolutely nothing this season, but sit there and angst. And I did not like that we went back to the whole she misses Archie thing. Like at all. And I'm not even saying that as a Bargy shipper. I'm saying that as someone who likes Veronica as a character and doesn't know why we backslid to Archie. For what?
I know like she didn't particularly like her husband, but like never mentions him.
Same thing, that there's literally a dead body in her bed and there is no trauma there whatsoever. It's like she's just become completely mute to any kind of a traumatic experience because the She-Wolf of Wall Street doesn't react like that. And I just feel like there was more to her character than that. And it's just like everybody's going through the motions instead of feeling what the story should let them feel.
The dialogue too kind of feels like the fun's been taken out of it too. Like I'm not there. A few seasons ago, there were so many lines that Lily had that were so funny and weird, and even Veronica too. And they're like, where are they? Where'd they go?
They're all
Like I
living in
want
Cheryl's house.
I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, them being like the writers and everybody, but I don't know. Something's not right with the season.
No, it's not. Two things I like is Jabitha and obviously Barchi. So to bring some levity to this portion of our podcast, I really enjoyed the Barchi content that they gave us. Even though it was still dark and angsty, but it moved the needle forward on their own personal arcs. I will forever be mad about season one's teacher-student relationship and how it wrapped. They were janky when it came to discussing what Miss Grundy did to Archie. And we finally got to the fact that she groomed and abused him this season when he's with this episode, the latest episode. But well, the latest episode when we're recording this pod. I don't know if we'll go back to it in the new one. But and I thought that was really great. I think KJ did a great job sort of playing the emotions of that. Like so it's clear Archie still hasn't even touched what happened to him at 15. I think he was 15 in that season, but when he was 15, and is ashamed of it and didn't want to share it with Betty. And then he did. I thought that was nice. I thought it was nice that Betty finally opened up to Archie about, having a serial killer for her father and then what she did to be free of TBK. I'm glad that they're not having a child yet. I think as much as Archie wants one, he needs some growth on his own, and so does Betty, especially in their relationship. But I thought it's a really sweet parallel when she's telling him what happened, because one thing that they've done lately, they've moved away from the window motif that they do a lot with them, and have brought on to candles, which is a reference to carry the torch. So it's always very yellow and warm when they're having a vulnerable scene together, and I appreciate that. I wish I could have been a Bargy who was screaming about everything that happened. Some of this stuff is happening. I feel like it's coming a little late, but I appreciate what was given to us, and I hope it continues. It probably won't as we go further into the storyline because we're getting towards the end and they need to get to the big battle. But I think Betty and Archie are in it for the long haul. I think Archie's more in it right now than Betty is, but I also think Betty's starting to realize that it's real, and she did need the reassurance from him that he wasn't going anywhere, because one of her insecurities about him is that eventually he'll just, move on. And I don't think that's going to happen, even with Veronica and Archie kissing in the preview.
I would love to see a little bit more lightness, like you said, between them, because their scenes, as much as I like seeing them together, because I think for me they're two of my favorite performers on the show and two of my favorite characters, I don't know, I just kept like thinking like, why can't some of these conversations happen while they're on a date or something, or like, or show us a scene that's unrelated to what's going on, but where they can talk about it. I don't know, I just feel like I've seen so many other shows incorporate lightness for the characters amid all of the stuff they're dealing with, to where like that's something that fans can hold on to when the show gets a little more rough.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have a lot of those moments to grab onto in modern Riverdale, unfortunately.
They're given to Jabitha.
Mhm.
Like there are little
Mhm.
cute moments that Jughead and Tabitha have. Like when he got the generator running and she was like, yeah, like jumping up and down, he hugged her and he spinned her. That was very cute. And I rewound it back because I thought it was adorable. But I think it's like one of the only pieces of levity, really, besides like Cheryl's one-liners, that the show has had in a while.
It's still so weird for me to see Cheryl put her hands up and make fire.
I don't
like
think they'll ever like talk about why that's happening.
No.
I'm still, I feel like it's gonna, like, this can't be forever, right? Like it has to go away. Like I'm imagining a spell being broken and their powers go away.
I think so.
That's the logical outcome.
Yeah, somehow like Fred is gonna get tied into this though, because Archie was looking at his picture and he was the anchor, made me think of Teen Wolf, that kept Percival from being able to take over his mind. That's the second time Fred has been referenced, at least for Archie, when it comes to his powers. So we'll see. As for us, y'all, we are crawling to this Riverdale season 6 finale finish line. At this point, my feelings on Riverdale, they're not even mixed. I want everyone to be set free. Us, the cast, the crew, set everyone free.
10 episodes, season 7, in and out. We can do it.
Yes.
That's
Come
not
on.
confirmed to anybody listening. That's just my hope.
Come on, Roberto, you can do it.
Now, like, I know that there's incentive because of this Netflix deal to create more episodes of Riverdale, but I'm strictly and firmly on team cut Roberto off with season 7.
Please.